Pastor Sam Yoon's preaching. That's our source for this explainer, and we're going to be diving deep into a really powerful message he delivered. It's all about one simple but huge idea: goodness. What is it really? Where on earth does it come from? And most importantly, how are we supposed to live it out? So to really get a handle on this, the sermon kicks off with a modern-day story. It's an example of goodness that's so powerful, it really just sets the stage and makes you ask some pretty profound questions about what it even means to be good. And at the very heart of this story is this small amount of money, 1,000 won. We're talking less than a single US dollar. And it was the price of a hamburger sold by a man named Lee Young-chol, a price that tells you everything you need to know about him. So get this. Lee Young-chol had a tough life. He did manual labor, never even finished elementary school because of poverty. But for 20 years, he chose to sell these burgers at a loss. Why? Just so that hungry university students would have something to eat. His kindness was so real that when he finally couldn't afford it anymore, about 3,000 of those students crowdfunded to get him started again. To them, he wasn't just the burger man. He was their professor of character. A story like that, it just makes you stop and think, right? Where does that kind of illogical, self-sacrificing goodness even come from? Is that something you can learn? And how could any of us possibly live up to that? And this is where it gets really interesting. The sermon proposes an answer. It suggests that this kind of goodness isn't some human invention we just cooked up on our own. No, it's actually an imitation of something much, much greater. Okay, so the core idea here is that the kindness we're called to show is basically a mirror. It's a reflection of God's own nature. It's not about us trying to generate goodness out of thin air, but about us responding to a goodness that was already there to begin with. And this divine goodness, well, you can understand it in 3 key ways. See, it's not just some random action. It's a core part of God's identity that has a direct and massive impact on all of us. First up, and this is a big one, goodness isn't just something God does, it's who He is. This verse from Jeremiah just lays it out so clearly. Kindness, justice, righteousness. These are the things He delights in. They're fundamental to His very character. And here's why that matters so much for us. It's not our own struggling and striving to be good that saves us. Instead, it's when we encounter this incredible, unearned goodness from God that our hearts actually change. That kindness is the very thing that makes us want to turn around and live a different way. Okay, so with that idea in mind, let's jump back in time and look at some ancient stories from the Bible. You can think of these as powerful blueprints, showing us exactly what this illogical, costly kind of goodness looks like when it's put into practice. And right away, we see these 2 powerful, almost polar opposite examples. On one side, you have the widow of Zarephath. In the middle of a famine, she gives away her very last meal. It was an act of total sacrifice. And on the other side, you've got Zacchaeus, this rich, corrupt tax collector who, after meeting Jesus, gives away his abundance in an act of totally transformative generosity. And with Zacchaeus, the scale of his repentance is just staggering. He didn't just say, oops, my bad. No, he stood up and pledged to repay anyone he cheated 4 times what he took. This wasn't some token gesture. This was a radical, expensive, and very public proof that his heart had genuinely changed. And then, of course, you have the famous parable of the Good Samaritan. It's a story that completely blows up our definition of who our neighbor is. It's not about who lives next door. It's simply anyone in need. And it shows us that real goodness crosses social divides. It always costs us something personally, and it follows through to make sure the person is truly cared for. So you start to see the pattern emerging from all these stories, right? This kind of goodness, it just doesn't make sense from a purely self-interested, what's in it for me point of view. It gives when it's hard, it serves when it's tired, and it loves when it's absolutely not required to. All right, so this brings everything down to the final and most practical question of all. So what? What does any of this mean for us today, right here, right now? How do we take all these big ideas and actually turn them into action? This right here is the key takeaway from the entire sermon. It boils down to this amazing idea. Goodness is not some passive feeling. It's not a theoretical belief you hold in your head. It is active. It is tangible. It's love with its sleeves rolled up, getting to work through our own hands and feet, just like Lee Young-chol and his 1,000 won burgers. So the challenge we're left with is a very personal one. It's really an invitation to just open our eyes to the needs right there in our own communities and our own lives, to see the hungry students, the lonely neighbor, the person who's hurting, and to find the courage to roll up our sleeves and serve. Because the final question isn't just, what is goodness? It's what are we going to do about it?